The following podcast is an American Influencer Council production.
Welcome to Creators with Influence, a podcast on the intersection between the creator economy and digital culture, where entrepreneurs come to share empowered stories.
Kiana Smith-Bruneteau is a creator advocate, champion of lifelong learning, and movement maker.
Karsten Tanis, known as Skinny Was Here, is a solopreneur, internationally recognized multimedia creator, and a promoter of creative inclusivity.
Together, they are your hosts.
Kiana, I am doing great. Are you finally ready to kick off this podcast?
Absolutely. And we're talking about a subject close to my heart, in particular with my retail background, creator to consumer brands. We've got Chris Lamontagne, CEO of Spring for Creators, with us today.
This is amazing. I'm so excited to hear what Chris has to say. I consider him a thought leader in this space, and I love how passionate he is for the creator economy and how he is an advocate using his platform not only to provide tools to creators, but also the infrastructure needed for digital entrepreneurs to achieve success.
He's such a visionary and down to earth and, definitely a person to follow on LinkedIn if you aren't already. And so let's bring him in.
Hello, Chris. How are you today?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here. I think maybe starting with my background. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Spring. I've been at Spring for the past coming up to 5 years now. But it's been an incredible journey of taking a business which had kind of come from e-commerce and really shifting it into being creator commerce focused. And no doubt we're going to get into that journey. Prior to that, though, I was working at an investment fund in London, focused on fast growing companies and looking at different companies to invest in. I was a operating partner, so I was kind of coming at things from a growth perspective. And I think that kind of bleeds quite a lot into my mindset of how I think about businesses, how I think about running businesses is like really growth first. Before that, I actually started my first company when I was 19. So I'm kind of like a serial entrepreneur. Being a serial entrepreneur, that sounds really fancy, but I had some spectacular failures in there as well. So it's not all kind of rosy. So kind of seeing like the trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship, as well as being in some super fast growing companies. So I was head of growth at a company called Get, which was a European version of Uber, and so kind of ride sharing. So rode that incredible train for a couple of years as well. So pretty mixed and varied background. And then obviously found myself based in Silicon Valley running Spring, which is where our headquarters are. Maybe quickly on Spring. Spring is the world's leading creator commerce platform. And what we mean by creator commerce is giving creators tools to build commerce businesses. And no doubt we're going to double click into that given the experience of you guys and how you think about the creator economy and the creator space. So the question though specifically about, executive thought leadership, I think this has changed radically. I think the last 5 years, this has changed radically gone are the days where a CEO can be a silent CEO and a silent C-suite. I think instead now, opinion and point of view and thought leadership is so critical. Social is definitely social platforms an amplification of the need for that dialogue. But I think specifically you also owe that to your constituents as well, whether it's your employees or whether the users who use your platform. There is a responsibility to have that leadership. And, you mentioned we've been LinkedIn buddies, but LinkedIn is really my platform of choice. I think it's such a powerful platform. I think it's quite an underused platform, if I'm totally honest, by professionals. So, I've really adopted that and, being pretty disciplined in the type of content that I put out onto those platforms. I really, really think about the importance of the type of content that I put on those platforms and see myself kind of reaping the rewards of investing in that. And it's something I really encourage like other employees in our company as well. It really does. And, the paper you're talking about is a piece called The Great Decentralization, which we published earlier this year. Funny story, though, is kind of how I suppose, developed that concept around like advocating for thought leadership is the investment fund I was working at had a thought leadership team and department. And I actually think investment funds and consultancy practices do this really, really well, where they share thought leadership pieces. What's interesting is I don't think that's translated to all, like, kind of to actually companies in the space. So if I think about companies who are kind of cutting edge, are they sharing enough thought leadership pieces? And then now when we come to a world of like the creator economy, you've got to ask, like, where do creators get their information from? And are we creating a centralized resource for them to be able to tap into what's the latest trend or what's the latest macro that's coming out of Asia or coming out of Europe? Or so we started this. It was the first hire that I made in the company. Is I hired the trends and insights person to build out a trends and insights team. She's a real superstar in our business who came in and built out that kind of muscle in the company, and we really haven't looked back from just producing great thought leadership content. And we use it internally a lot. We reference it internally a lot. Everyone's always excited when we hear that there's another piece coming out the door. So it's something that is a big part of what we do.
You know, the how I become a CEO thing, I think is deeply it's a deeply personal thing as well, right? Is understanding what that means, what that question truly means to you, and understanding how you approach that. From my perspective, and this might sound like a really contrite thing to say, in that I always thought of myself, even when I first joined the business, I always thought of myself as a leader. Like I think the first piece to that is like attitude. It's like, are you coming in thinking like that, or are you waiting for someone to tell you? That kind of setup for me was just like a massive piece of recognizing that this was a business that needed leadership, and I could be that leader in the place of kind of stepping into the company. So there was a real attitude adjustment of just taking the opportunity. I think it really helps if you've had your own business and you recognize what it takes to run a business, and you kind of feel that attachment to a business in the early days anyway. For Spring specifically, yeah, as you called out, Teespring as it was had kind of gone through a bit of a roller coaster ride of fast growth and then slow down and then trouble and trying to figure itself out. So I think it was a business in need of kind of picking up and driving. So it was kind of, for some people don't want to take that on. For me, that's like the perfect opportunity was kind of to dive in. And specifically, there were a couple of things of standing up and being that leader is what people in the company wanted. You know, people were kind of looking to someone to kind of for that leadership. And, you know, I kind of think I was able to step up and say, hey, let's go this direction. And then it was people's choice to follow and see and kind of get behind that. So a lot of it was then, once you've had that attitude piece, once you've had set the direction, then it's about just showing up and that kind of repeatability of just making sure that on a daily basis that you're there, that you're kind of in the trenches with people to kind of set that direction. And I think, there's different forms of leadership, but I'm very much a person of like, I want to be there. I want to be on the front lines with everybody to be able to help them achieve what they want to go and achieve. And that's really what like the secret to the transition from Teespring to Spring has been. And to build a profitable company and to build a fast growing company, it's just been no secret. It's been super hard work. Super hard work. We've gone at it for coming up to 5 years now since I joined the business, and, really been able to kind of do some pretty incredible things. And yeah, incredibly proud to be able to stand back. But, and there's an important but, we're still not done. We've still got so much more to go and do.
Yeah.
Which I think it kind of, that's where a lot of that motivation starts to come from then. First of all, this concept of social commerce, as you said, that's not a new concept. It's really been around since we all became connected on the internet, since we all had Facebook or MySpace or whatever it was. This concept of social commerce was, can we transact with each other? Can we now buy and sell from each other? That's not a net new concept. How it's evolved though is fascinating, and I think how we're seeing it evolve as a platform is that now we're recognizing that there's this incredible group of creators, which, in some ways they're kind of described as like the fastest growing new small business. It's like these people who are digital first. They were born on the internet.
They were born understanding how the internet works, probably better than anybody. And then what's kind of happened there is like the macro of like content. So like content and absorbing content and commerce has kind of converged into one. So whereas we were on Instagram to scroll for photos, now you're on Instagram to scroll for products that you might want to buy. Same with like Pinterest or Snapchat or kind of any of these things. This concept now that the two have converged into like this one kind of amalgamation of content and commerce. And then to unpick all of that, like creators are the people on these social platforms that can create conversation and communities better than anybody else. So I'd argue that creators are probably the future of commerce, in that they unpick all of the directions where commerce is going. So if I was a big brand, and you see so much with influencer marketing and how brands can unlock these creators, but I actually think there's maybe even a more extreme view where like creators recognize that they can be brands and they can be a modern brand.
And jumping in, I know that you also spoke about the evolution of the digital economy, but we've also seen that you've rebranded Spring. Can you tell us what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, so it kind of goes a little bit back in the history book. So Teespring originally was a business that was founded in 2012. And what's really, really cool is like a lot of the early concepts around early Teespring kind of still ring true. This idea of being able to like do everything from design through to delivery still exists. So you can do everything on our platform. We just felt though, as the ecosystem was modernizing, we had to modernize, and we did a lot of that with the product. So we evolved from like t-shirts and hoodies to 180 different physical products that you can create on the platform now. And then last year, we also added digital products into the ecosystem as well. So courses and tutorials and photo filters and NFTs
and even podcasts.
And podcasts, yeah. So we've kind of evolved the product. And the last thing really for me was like, hey, we need to build a brand that we can grow into rather than like a brand. We kind of felt like we like Teespring, like the brand we were kind of busting out the seams. We were so much more. Mm-hmm. So we hired an incredible VP of marketing who joined us, a guy called Les Green, who joined us from Nike. And Les was running Nike ID. So that was the customization of Nike products on the platform there. And I think he'd really seen like the power of creator commerce. There was lots of creators doing collabs with Nike. And Les kind of sought us out and was like, hey, I've got this idea around how we could like rebrand this business and freshen it up to become the next big platform in the space. And that was how Spring was born. And we spent so much time, not just like, it sounds obvious to say like Teespring to Spring, but actually we really dug into like the meaning of the brand and what it represents. And what I loved about that is like Spring represents like newness and like the season Spring, like the season of like new stuff coming out all the time. But it also can be like translated to mean like a spring in an engine as well, like a kind of the catapult behind propelling ideas onto the internet and giving movement to new concepts and stuff like that. So we really just went deep into like this meaning of behind the brand. And it's been incredibly successful. We've been able to work with some amazing creators who kind of helped us launch the brand as well. So yeah, it's been a pretty big whirlwind of changing everything. We've got a big platform. We've got 7.7 million creators on the platform now. So
wow.
So to change a brand, actually, there's a lot of work involved. But it's
understatement.
Yeah, I say that as I kind of see like product managers staring at me going, but it's been totally worth it. It's been incredible. And I think more than anything, Spring doesn't just represent who we are today, but it kind of represents what we want to be. And we've still got work to do to chase into that, which is what I really love. It means that it opens up the concept of what we can go and be as a business.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you briefly mentioned like NFTs, and that's like currently a hot topic. What else is exciting you in this digital space?
Yeah, I think I think the digital product and NFT ecosystem. It's hard because I think it's hard to distill the noise. There's so much noise there, and there's so much kind of
potential kind of like what's good, what's bad. And I think specifically with NFTs, I thought that actually there was like incredible value in helping creators on that. So we've been really, really excited with NFT with digital products as a whole. So just to kind of paint a bit more color to that is, we've got some creators who are creating really rich content, but then creating digital products to go with that. So we've got a YouTuber right now, a guy called The Outsider, who's one of my favorite YouTubers, who's like this DIY crafts creator. And his thing is he kind of builds cabins in the woods. So he goes to like remote places and builds like these cool cabins, which is really, really cool. But now he's created like a PDF download of like a how-to guide, almost like an IKEA style how-to guide of like how to build. So you can watch this video and download the digital product of like, and I think that's just such more of like an immersive experience of like, it's not just watching a video anymore. It's like, oh no, you can partake in that. So just a really cool idea of like what I mean by when I see digital products is like crossing the online offline. I think other interesting things though, this sounds like really boring, but we're actually really excited by some of like the infrastructure side of the creator economy as well. And what we mean by that is like things like protection for creators. So kind of like IP protection, trademarking. Really, trademarking doesn't really work for small creators. So like, why don't we come up with a new way to do that? And there's some of the ideas that we're playing around with. How could we build better accountancy products for creators? How could we build better cash flow programs for creators, which is a couple of people working on. So it sounds it's like the unsexy stuff, but it's the stuff that shifts like from this being like the creator economy even being like a buzzword to an ecosystem. And that's why I'm personally really excited about some of like that secondary infrastructure ecosystem things on the platform as well.
And that's, a lot of the conversations we're also having, just like, how do you help creators be more financially capable? We are in the blurred lines of a gig economy and the creator economy. And so it's like, how do you keep helping this group of small businesses, but we move at such a rapid pace that you then have a new group of nano and micro creators that enter our space every day. And so there has to be a support system that helps the new generation that keeps emerging in our market have the tools and resources that they need to maneuver the way around our space. So I love that, hearing about financial services and all of the, health and welfare and benefits and all of those things that we're accustomed to in corporate, but that haven't necessarily trickled down to the creator space and helping young people understand how to provide that for their own businesses.
I think the gig economy is a really good proxy actually, because the ideals for the gig economy was totally right. It's like, hey, maybe there's this more fluid way where like everyone can work and do like a little bit of work here and it can be super flexible. But we kind of forgot about some of that infrastructure, the 0-hour contracts and kind of all of the work that went on there. We kind of forgot about that. And I think it's a really important note to think about, hey, again, the creator economy has real utopian ideals, right? Of like this idea of do what you love, create, creativity at the heart of everything you do. But it's super important that we underpin it with infrastructure and we underpin it to say, hey, let's make sure that creators are supported to be able to go and do what they want to do. And beyond that, maybe it's like, and I think again, this is maybe a shortfall of the gig economy. It's not just the creator having to put all of the hours in. You hear about creator burnout as a real thing, right? Of content after content. And like, if you create a creator economy that's paid for by the ad-driven model, then it's going to create burnout. One of the things I love about what we do with commerce is creators can be selling products while they sleep because their content lives online and their products can live directly underneath their videos or on their TikTok feed and people can find them in different ways. That the monetization and like the how people make money is actually it's a lot more in line with like a healthy balance for creators. And that's something that, I just feel pretty deeply about. And I spend a lot of time talking to creators to make sure that they've got that balance where it's just like, it's not just content machine of filming every hour of your day just to stay afloat.
For sure. Yeah. And maybe Carson wants to jump in about, because mental health is a topic he's so passionate about.
Well, yeah, I mean, just, speaking as a content creator and a digital entrepreneur, you're constantly, again, churning out content after content, but you're finding out there's a lot less hours in a day. So I love the concept of making money while you sleep, because so often it seems like being an influencer is such a short-term goal, but there are long-term and adverse effects that can happen from, just burning yourself out. But yeah, just talking about some of the protections and, some of the steps that you're taking to kind of, I guess, reduce the creator burnout, or, just even help with mental health and wellness. What was something that stood out to you, or any examples that you've seen of just like creator burnout that come to mind?
Yeah, I think that the biggest one for me was it was kind of like a watershed moment, I think, in the creator space, where the minute a creator starts to think of themselves as more like a brand rather than just that kind of the creator that makes content, I think is a really important moment. And that sounds like it could be like a too commercialized of a point, but it's not. It's a point to say that your brand or your affinity with your fans can live without you just creating content. And we've seen some incredible creators who've taken what their content means and then translate that into a consumer brand. So a really good example is we've got an incredible creator who's YouTube TikTok creator called Miles Carter. Miles is a spoken word poet. And I even love that he's a spoken word poet who's like so successful on these platforms. Super young guy, really into poetry for years. Built up this incredible following. I want to say he's got maybe 600,000-700,000 followers on platforms. So not massive, but like they love what he does.
Oh, a macro creator.
Yeah, they really love what he does. But Miles created his own brand, and a brand called Made to Feel, and it was actually a lot about the content he was creating. And then he built this brand and the aesthetics around this brand, which is beautiful. He really thought about what it represented, and his brand really took off. But he was the catalyst to that, and then that started creating still sells to this day. Because he took his content, what his content was about, and then translated that back to his fans and to his community. And I think that was probably one of the best examples with regards to understanding his own kind of capacities to say, hey, I can't create content all day, every day, but in fact, I can build this brand that people can enjoy and represent what he's about. And I think that was just a great watershed moment. And we've seen the most successful creators can separate and say, hey, this is my commerce brand, and this is the content that I create, and the two can intermingle in a really, really healthy way. And I think that's how they can and that's how we try and advocate for creators to protect themselves, is to say, like, let's create that separation. Some people might be saying, well, how do you build a brand? Well, on purpose, we built our own in-house design team to support with creators, helping them do that, and say, like, hey, here's some of the best practices, things that we've seen before work really, really well. Let's put them into, so it's kind of not just like a cold start of like good luck. We provide a lot of resources to like, hey, this is what works, this is what doesn't.
And in terms of resources, I want to just jump into, in case some of our listeners don't realize that, launching a creator to consumer brand, it can be extraordinarily costly. Coming from the retail space, what I love about Spring for Creators is that there are no upfront costs. I set up a Spring account just so that I could understand what the process was, and it's so streamlined. I mean, if you're an illustrator or a photographer and you want to put your work on merch, it's so easy. I just loved how great the interface is and all of the different options you offer. And I also wanted to just jump in terms of just like supply chain and like supply chain responsibility too, because people don't have to like buy a ton of merch. You know, that's really affected the fashion industry where fashion designers, young fashion designers have just like warehouses full of merch that they haven't pushed. And spring doesn't have that issue. I would love for you to get into, you know, your POD, print on demand, which I think is a great concept, and how you sort of are helping, you know, the environment with this business model.
Yeah, well, you know, we hear a ton of horror stories of creators who've gone out and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on product in boxes that is like lying around in, you know, people's front living rooms. You know, it's some real horror stories there, which, and I think I you know what I do, I understand that most people's conception is like, hey, I want to start a brand, I need to buy the product and then try and sell it. Well, we kind of took the very opposite approach. Is like, well, what about if we could use the internet to put products in front of people, and then when people want to buy that product, let's make it. Let's make it. And that's kind of, you know, how you describe print on demand. There's actually even a bigger term which is called pre-commerce, which I kind of like better, which is this idea of understanding what to make before or understanding what you want to make before it's been bought. And that idea of like pre-sales and kind of all of those kind of ecosystems have existed for a while. Print on demand is like a double click into that, but we really have evolved our supply chain to not just be print on demand, but to be made on demand. And what we mean by that is like, it might be printed products, so it could be hoodies or t-shirts or tote bags, but it also could be 3D toys. You know, it could be plushies, and it could be branded skateboards if we wanted it to be. But we've took the infrastructure, the essence of print on demand, and really evolve that to be lots of different products, because that's how we understand that creators want to sell. They don't want to have to put money down. They don't want to have to be waylaid with this kind of inventory piece. So we've kind of taken that on in the way we've built our business, and it really speaks to what it is we're trying to be. You know, there's plenty of great e-commerce tools out there right now. Shopify, Squarespace, you know, all these great big e-commerce tools. But are there e-commerce tools or commerce tools for creators specifically? And we think no risk or inventory is a big thing for creators. We think pushing to social platforms is a big thing for creators. It's like being directly where the fans are, handling all of the supply chain. So not to mention the upfront piece, but what happens if the fan doesn't like the product and they want to return it? That's a real headache. So we take that on for creators. Pricing, you know, we take that on for creators of getting the best prices on the market to make sure that people can make the most money in selling every single product. So that's really like the zero in on how we've tried to be thinking about the platform, is this commerce tool for creators specifically. That's who we're designing for. That's what Spring's all been about, is this zero in on what creators need and then building that and putting it into production.
And that's so important because I think, you know, I don't know if you read the information. It's one of course, Kaya's killing
Kaya's
it.
great, right?
Yes,
Yeah, she's really
with her newsletter. But, you know, she put out that great report of all of the VCs and different startups coming out and building tools. And I think, you know, what I find interesting is that you have so many different businesses popping out, but I don't think that they are being built or the teams are coming out with a creator first mentality, and that doesn't help accelerate our industry. And what I love about Spring is that, you know, the product is really for Gen Z, millennial, digital. There are plenty of creators who have communities who want to just have a small piece of their creativity. And so what I love about Spring is all of the different options that you can sort of allow your friends, especially during holidays or, you know, true commercialized times when creators, especially in the family space, I think a lot of, fashion creators who are now like mompreneurs are experimenting. There are so many options there.
I think you're right with one of the fears I have, and this is maybe a slight negative slant on it, but one of the fears I have with the creator economy and kind of all this buzz and hype is that we forget the creator, which sounds like a really bizarre thing to say. But what I mean by that is we become obsessed by the business model. And the thing that I really reject is, I've heard sometimes like creators being referred to as like the human stock market. It's like, that is just such a negative term for me. And it's something I'll always kind of reject and be like, hey, this isn't what I'm doing, understanding the people that we work with, and in fact that these people have got like incredible creative like minds and built amazing communities. Like that's what we should be double clicking into. And I do fear that, like lots of companies are getting funded, which is fantastic. The problem with some of that financing sometimes is that the companies have got to prove out growth in order to get to the next fundraise, and in order to prove out growth, what typically happens is money then flows into the wrong places. And we have seen this before in the creator space. We saw it with MCNs, where MCNs popped up, everyone was an MCN for a couple of weeks, everyone had an MCN, and unfortunately we didn't have some of the rigor there to be able to support that in the right way. And what happened was, we know what happened. It just didn't work in that way, and I think a lot of creators got burnt. So that's like I suppose the heed of caution of like, let's make sure that the creator economy stays about creators, and we keep that at our core. And like, I think we've got to self-police that as platforms, as leaders. And it's something me and our kind of partners, our YouTube partners, TikTok partners, Instagram, we talk about it a lot. It's like, how do we keep this elevation of like what it means to be a creator, like at the core of every product that we build together.
Mm-hmm. So a quick question for you, because you talked about some of these platforms forgetting about the creator. Without naming names, what are some of the takeaways that you've seen from some of these platforms that you think that you can either correct, or some things that you've learned from their actions that you now implement into Spring?
So let's think. I think you see a lot of duplicates. I think you see like people seeing one business model work and then people just doing the exact same thing. And you typically see that when an industry is hot, right? You see competitors in the space with, the smallest of tweaks, and then, all of a sudden they're kind of competitive. I think we've got to be super careful there. And I think there's a responsibility to the bigger platforms, so like the Instagrams and TikToks, and is making sure that there's some form of like self-regulation around what platforms are kind of supporting what creators. So I think that's a big one. The other thing I see a lot of tools businesses like SaaS focused, where people are trying to get creators to spend upfront, and that's typically because the SaaS business model is like, it's the popular one. It's the one that everyone kind of wants. So I think there's an importance there again of like, if you're truly about creators, then you should build a product that enables creators, not charges them. One of the things I'm probably most proud about Spring is it's free to use. There's no more democratic than being free. And it's, and the reason it's free to use is, again, there's some fantastic commerce tools on the market that are pay to play, they're pay to build. But we recognize that like creators need this kind of ease and like exactly how you described it, like, to get products to market quickly. We see literally 2 days ago, we had a what do you say? Mompreneur? Mompreneur, who signed up and made $12,000 in a day. Your TikTok creator who just like this crazy idea. She signed up the day before, created a product and made $12,000 in sales. Wow. And we see them very regularly of people who just like have these ideas and come to market super quickly. So I see people quite like, people trying to charge creators first and foremost and trying to monetize them in that way, which I don't think is the right way to do it. I think, in fact, empower creators, like support them to get live, and then figure out the monetization piece later. And we're super lucky. We've spent 8-9 years now building a highly profitable, scalable business. But there was a lot of those ideals. Spring has always been free, and we'll always keep it free. And it's just an important part of our DNA.
We're very much aligned from a mission perspective because of the American Influencer Council. We are education first. I would love for you to talk to us a little bit about, how are you, in terms of like scaling the business for fashion, beauty, lifestyle creators like Carson. Perhaps it's more, easy to get the commerce piece of it, but maybe for those barbers, and there's some really great examples on YouTube of creators who are barbers who didn't think about commerce and now have like blown up, or tattoo artists, or just non-traditional creators who haven't thought about commerce. How do you convince them about your value prop?
So it's a really good question, and we spend a lot of time like kind of exploring different verticals as well. So we look at like the obvious ones like gaming and lifestyle and fitness. Like there's pretty well formed models. But what I like to think about is like what connects creators, and there's three things that kind of connect creators in my mind. Is first of all creativity. Like everyone's creative, so all those people you just mentioned, whether it's chefs on TikTok or barbers or athletes or whatever it is, there's some kind of creative concept that they're making content creatively. So I think that's like number one. I think the second one is then there's a need to sustain whatever it is they're doing and to monetize. So there's already that ambition to say like, hey, I'm doing this, I want to monetize it, I want to kind of create that value, like that value exchange. And then the last one is pride. So, what we mean by pride is building up that brand in that respect, and being able to say like that they exist not just in the offline world, but they exist on the online world as well. And like, how do we translate those two? So when trying to help people with like creative ideas from like non-traditional spaces, we've seen like tattoo artists take their tattoos and turn them into prints and turn them into posters, which is like, if you think about it, it's like not that far removed from what it is they do already.
Yeah.
Barbers, we've seen barbers want to create branded accessory packs. So like things like to be able to keep their tools in, or to keep their work stuff in. We've seen them want to create certain different products to be able to support their stores. We've seen, I'm trying to think of some other really creative examples. DIY channels are probably one of our most popular YouTube category of DIY channels who want to create things like tool belts, and we've got barbecue channels who want to create aprons. So we see like a ton of creativity there, and I think once you step back and understand that creativity connects all of these people, I actually think commerce becomes much more easier. It's like, and that's why we developed a team in-house to be able to really double click. So I'm yet to find a creator who's signed up to Spring and we've not been able to help them with a creative idea.
Yeah.
Or to give them an example. And that's kind of the platform that we're trying to build.
It's so exciting. I mean, the possibilities in our space are so endless, and that's what makes doing what we do so exciting, Chris. Just in closing, how can people find you on social? You said LinkedIn's your channel of choice.
It is. LinkedIn's definitely my channel of choice. So definitely follow or connect on LinkedIn. The platform, so we use Spring for Creators on Instagram. That's kind of our handle there. We're pretty active on Instagram, producing a lot of content there. The website is spri.ng, so just the word Spring. That's our kind of website, and we're trying to put as much content on there, and tools and tips, and providing people with resource on there as well. So, I know sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming to get started, but we want to kind of make that whole process super easy. So there's a lot of content on the website. But yeah, I think LinkedIn, I try and post 3 to 4 times a week on LinkedIn with something interesting, whether it's my own content. I have kept a blog since I've been CEO as well in the company.
On Medium, right?
On Medium, yeah, on Medium. So I think it's just really important to document. So I'm definitely on Medium, and you can read some of that stuff about the trials and tribulations of running a Silicon Valley tech company.
Thank you so much for joining Carson and I on Creators with Influence.
No, thank you guys for having me. It's been really fun.
That was so inspiring. If you aren't thinking about ways to capitalize on your influence through commerce, you should start now. Spring for Creators offers endless opportunities. And if you are looking for platforms, there are tons of options on the market to explore. Now's the time. Think with an entrepreneurial mindset.
No, definitely agreed. I love that phrase as well. And I love that Chris is bringing his thought leadership into the space and providing this platform that is allowing these digital entrepreneurs like myself to use these tools and utilize this platform to own more of the content that I'm creating and also create my own e-commerce brands within the space. So Chris, thank you for all of the knowledge that you've dropped. And Kiana, thank you so much for helping to host this crazy podcast adventure that we're on so far.
Oh, without a doubt. And you have some prints that I know I would put on a hoodie in a second and rock. So
I'm starting my account as we speak. So don't even worry about that. I'm also encouraging some friends right now to jump on Spring so that they can get a jump start on it as well.
This is Creators with Influence. I'm Kiana Smith-Brunetto.
And I'm Karsten Skinny Tannis.
And we're signing off.
Creators with Influence is produced by the American Influencer Council, the sole 501c6 not-for-profit trade association in the U.S. created by and for career creators.